It's okay. It's cold and grey everywhere, apparently.
Stay on.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another Friday live stream.
Absolutely. From nice and frosty London.
It's very chilly today. Sounds like everybody is chilly. You're doing a big stretch on
It's good. That's my warm-up.
That's right.
Pre-live stream.
Calisthenics, or whatever it's called. So today we are talking about Z lenses. As you may see here, we have a couple of offerings on the table. There's a reason for that. We've been quite fortunate.
Are those the lenses that Nikon released very recently?
Yes, this one is actually belongs to one of our customers, so please be nice to it.
I think I should wear gloves.
Yes, you should. Yes, we are live, exactly. Please do, if you haven't already, please do give us a thumbs up. We like a like. It helps the channel, helps the stream, kind of puts it out there into places that maybe people wouldn't have otherwise seen it. And also, our coffee fund is open. So if you'd like to contribute to the coffee fund, you can do that.
Those are very useful.
Exactly. I have a whole list of people that I need to thank. I'm going to have to do that before. I can't do multitask. I'll find it.
Okay.
Just remind me. Can you remind me?
Okay.
To thank the coffee fund people
for things. Okay.
Yes. So today we're talking about Z lenses. Now, this is in part off the back of a great email that was sent to us with some discussion points. But also we kind of we went out yesterday and shot with these lenses. The 100 to 400 has been loaned to us by Nikon for a very small window of time. And we were like, okay, we need to get out and shoot with the lens. So if you followed my stories on Instagram, I'm sorry, I forgot to tag you in every single one of those stories.
That's why I haven't seen anything.
I just realized that I was doing it in a sort of slightly numb and stupefied state last night. It was very cold yesterday.
It was.
But we went to the London Wetland Centre, or the Wildfowl Wetland.
Yeah, photograph some duckies.
Duckies, yeah, exactly. I thought you said photograph some Beckies. I was like, didn't take any pictures of me.
Well, there's some photographs of Becky.
Maybe one or two.
On my memory card.
Yeah, but we shot with the 100 to 400, both with and without teleconverter, mostly with.
Mostly with, you need it.
Yeah.
In the X crop sometimes.
That's right. And then we also brought along the 70 to 200 2.8, which occasionally Con would let me use with the teleconverter because he was sort of trying to take the teleconverter. The first load of shots, I had the TC on the 70 to 200.
That's true. And it was still quite far away from the subjects.
I felt like I needed to be closer all the time, pretty much. There wasn't a situation in which I thought, oh, that's perfect focal length for this situation. It wasn't. And then we also shot a little bit with the 24-120. We have done a few shoots with the 24-120 now because we've been testing out in all kinds of situations. It's much more of a general purpose lens. So we thought we'd talk about those. But also, we're going to talk about the roadmap has been slightly updated, and we're also going to talk about your kind of wish list of what you want to see on the roadmap that isn't there yet because we know that Nikon said they were going to release 30 lenses for the system by the end of the financial year, which is essentially March. We've now just had the 400mm. The amount of excitement about the 400mm actually surprised me because it's a beautiful lens, but that's not a lens for everyone, I don't think.
Well, it's a little bit expensive. So I guess, not for me. I'll stick to my 40 pancake.
Not for me either.
You just take off one nil from 400 and it becomes 40 pancake.
Yeah, exactly. It's also a much smaller lens, the 40mm. This one isn't exactly what you'd call pocketable.
That's true. But for people who need it, I guess it justifies the cost, and having built-in teleconverter, which pushes it to 560 mil focal distance, could be quite useful. So again, not for me, but I don't do this type of photography. But for pros, I guess that's one that is essential.
Yeah. One thing that I will comment on is the Z9's capability. I would like to go a week without talking about the Z9. I actually get a bit sick of talking about it, if I'm completely honest. It's such a good camera. Oh.
Yes.
But it's a lens that will perform at its best on that body. Without a doubt.
But it's difficult to come back to Z6 after Z9.
You're so spoiled. Yeah, no, it's true.
And it's just weird. It's just, because you get used to good things. And again, I won't care that much about, let's say, like animal focus tracking or anything else, because I don't do this type of photography. So Z6 does the job. I would use it traditionally, kind of old school way, single focusing points in the middle, focus and recompose stuff.
Yeah.
But there, you just set it to continuous tracking, animal recognition. You just keep holding the iPhone And then when you're ready to take a picture, you press shutter release button. It's amazing.
I know. Yesterday in the wetland center, actually, the main thing I found was that there were too many birds for sometimes the bird tracking to figure out what I wanted to focus on. But that wasn't the camera's fault. That was entirely the scene, and you just had to trust that it did the right thing. I actually still need to look at my photos from
That's
yesterday.
true. Camera can't actually sometimes decide, but especially like, if you have like 10 birds flying around the same distance, then camera may struggle to pick actually the bird you want. And that's where, let's say, fully automatic autofocus system may struggle. But to be honest with you, if we would have the right lens, something like 800 mil, then it wouldn't be the case, because then you would actually maybe would have only 3 birds in the frame, and it would be much easier to choose.
Yeah, exactly. So just to answer a couple of questions from you already, John, it was the 1.4 that we were using yesterday, not the 2 times. I will say I've used the 2 times on the 70 to 200. Haven't used it on this one.
Okay.
But I just the pictures kind of lost their edge a bit, I found, with the 2 times. It wasn't that I wasn't impressed, because the 2 times converter is still fantastic for what it is.
Is it better than F-mount version?
Yes.
Okay.
The fall off is much less noticeable, but when I was comparing 1.4 shots versus 2 times shots, I was thinking, it loses a little bit more. The 1.4, you basically don't feel like you've got a 1.4 converter on, because you don't really lose any quality at all.
That's true. And then you don't really notice any autofocus slow down with the lens, with the teleconverter attached to the lens, which was surprisingly good. With F-mount versions, you definitely feel that.
Yeah.
With the Z, we didn't notice, at least on Z9.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you to David for 2 cups worth of coffee. That's a coffee and a half each. To Jean, who's in frosty 0 degree Illinois.
Wow.
Good gracious. 0 degree in Illinois is minus, isn't it?
I hope it's not 0 Fahrenheit, because that would be very cold inside.
I think it must be, because
no, it can't be.
That would be.
I think 0 is about 20.
Minus
Fahrenheit?
20.
Okay, hold on. 0
Let's Google Celsius to
0 Fahrenheit in Celsius.
That's
minus 17.
Good gracious.
That's cold.
That would be cold. We're getting into Russia territory
That's
there.
true. Someone told us on the comments that when I said, like, well, Britain's not that cold unless you're somewhere in Scotland and Wales, and people say, oh, it's cold in England. Well, I'm from Russia, so I have a point of comparison. Where I'm from, the coldest where I'm from was about minus 40, but it's generally you hit minus 30 at least 3-4 times in winter a year.
Crikey.
The good news is it's quite dry, so it's quite crispy frost. So because if it would be humid, it would be awful.
That's the problem. When you come out of the shop, for example, today, I just popped around the block, and it's that damp cold, so it gets into your bones. Yesterday, it took me a good 40 minutes in front of the heater to warm up after being outside all day. Thank you also to Adrian for your contribution to the coffee fund, and to Vince. Thank you so much.
And don't forget Ian as well. Thank you very much.
And Ian, yeah, absolutely. And Randall and Jeremy.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Going to be nice and toasty.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
So Vince said, great topic. The X-Photozine test of the 24-120 is very impressive. They literally had to change their charts to show the score. I'm most excited for the roadmap 85mm. Not on the roadmap. I'd like a light 70 to 300. Yes, points to you. I completely agree. I want a lightweight 70 to 300.
I think we need that, because we basically don't have consumer long-range zoom lens.
Yeah, it's actually a problem, I find, because after hulking, so we got a lone Z9. I told Con not to bring it because I didn't want it to steal the limelight.
That's true. We're trying to take a break.
Yeah.
At least on YouTube. So while we rigorously testing it right now.
Yes, exactly. So with the Z9 100 to 400 on that, I really felt that. Then when I went to the Z6 with the 70 to 200, I was like, oh, this is so portable. But what I really need is a 70 to 300 non 2.8 S line.
That's true. And that's why I need Z8, because I need a smaller camera with all that fancy technology of Z9. That's, because, yeah, as you said, it's heavy. But when you use it and you come back to Z6, like for at least action shots and things like this and wildlife type of shots, then yeah, you can clearly see the winner. For general photography, I wouldn't worry too much.
No, exactly. It's the autofocus really makes a difference when you're in those wildlife settings. But for day-to-day stuff, honestly, you can take pictures of your cats with a Z6, no problem. You don't need a Z9 to do that.
Well, that's true. And like we don't really shoot wildlife as much. I mean, I've started recently because
I do a bit more than
that's it.
Yes,
yeah.
I do a little bit more than you, I would say.
True. That's true.
But it just happens to be where I am is quite countrified. So
it's quite beautiful.
The thing that I really want to try and test out, which has been more difficult in the winter times and didn't get to spend enough time doing it yesterday, but would be the Z9 for small birds. Because small birds, particularly, I don't know, probably in most parts of the world, but in the UK, we have this wonderful kind of little bird species variant, and you can see so many different birds in one sort of regional
like
location,
the tiny ones.
but they're very, very little, from blue tits and great tits to robins. Obviously we see robins everywhere, but we also get things that were in that booklet that we got from the Wetland Centre yesterday. Yes. So many different ones, and I thought, gosh,
so many different kinds of ducks.
There's a lot of different ducks. That's true. Michael says Quebec is -30 right now, and it's -5 in West Wales. Sophia, I really feel for you. Goodness me.
That's all the weather in my town.
You want to go to okay. Just as a comparison, this is both your weather watch and your Z-Lens watch.
-10. Okay, it's not too bad.
That's not,
At night it goes to -22. It's not bad.
Good gracious. So. Anyway, we're kind of also putting in our experiences from yesterday. I don't think we did a huge amount of discussion around the trip yesterday and what kind of went into it. Most of our talking points were on the subject of how we were finding the lens performing.
I think, in my opinion, 100 to 400 at the price it's at, it's a very good lens for the money, and. Yes, depending on the budget, but let's say compared to 400 Prime that just been announced, which is 13,500 British pounds.
A lot of money.
This is, in a way, is a good deal. Obviously, still quite expensive, but if you do shoot, let's say, a bit of wildlife, and a bit of sports and action, this is really good. And then, if you add something like 1.4 teleconverter, the drop in image quality is very tiny. So I was quite impressed, and just photographing my pup Tilly running towards me, so which is again the most kind of difficult part because the distance is changing so dramatically that the lens with the teleconverter coped really well. So I think I had maybe on Z9 about probably something around 20% of, let's say, autofocus images, and 80% were pin sharp and at 20 frames per second. I think that's really good with a teleconverter. And without teleconverter, I think I had about 10% of autofocus shots.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. I'm looking forward to seeing your results when we have them. Terry said, I had fun for a few hours with a Z9 and a 500 PF on Tuesday at the RSPB in rain and marshes. Totally surprised how many shots it can take and how light it was compared to my D750. Really? That's interesting. I suppose you'd expect it to be much heavier. But that's great that you managed to do that, Terry. I'm looking forward to it.
And I'm sure you've got it on board because you've got 500 PF.
I do.
And I may give you Z9.
Yes, that's the next test. Well, when we did our Z9 first impressions video, the 500 PF was the lens we used.
That's true.
For the ducks there, but I do want to do the small birds with that, and that's the kind of thing you do really need to just have lots of patience. Roy said, I need a way to pay the coffee fund here through PayPal. Well, we do have PayPal. We have a PayPal me link down below. It doesn't show up on our screen, obviously, straight away, but I do check it about once a week or so just to see if anyone's decided to pay that way, which is always very much appreciated. So you can do that, Roy, if you feel like contributing. But yes, it doesn't sort of show up live because YouTube doesn't work that way.
To the YouTube thing,
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Keith, for your contribution to the Coffee Fund as well. Wow, he said a bit off topic, but I wonder if anyone has issues with D850 3D focus tracking being unreliable. Mine rarely stays on target like the D750 did. Thanks for your wonderful streaming video as well. Thank you. So that's interesting because I've had a D750 and a D850, so I went from one to the other. I didn't find the D750 sort of 3D focus tracking that reliable. In my case, that was using the 70 to 200 2.8. I actually found the D850 a little bit more reliable. But what have you ever used the D850 for 3D tracking?
I didn't use 3D tracking much in my experience because, again, I don't really shoot much action and sport and wildlife. But what I did find that 3D tracking is not reliable if you are in a very low contrast situation or low light. Because it tracks effectively by the color, you really need to have a good separation. So if you, let's say, photographing a seagull, flying in the sky, in a gray sky, it won't track really well.
But against a blue sky.
Even on blue sky, it sometimes struggles. But let's say if it flies, where the trees are, then you clearly have the separation between, let's say, dark greens and whites. So that's where it will track quite good. But I've noticed that the contrast makes a lot of difference. So again, tennis player on the pitch, you normally have either green pitch or, let's say, or brown pitch, etc. So you have a really good contrast there. But anywhere where it's more or less flat, you'll find that you'll struggle a little bit.
Yeah, my experience was with small birds like blue tits and things like that against bare branches. Very, very difficult. In fact, nearly impossible for a D850 to pick up on that.
Yeah, single focusing point. That's
where you want to be. So 3D tracking was essentially unusable in those scenarios. I mean, even with the Z cameras, obviously they have much more intelligent 3D tracking. The Z9 did a great job, but it would have struggled. In fact, I think once or twice I tried to get a couple of small birds yesterday. Those bare branches and sort of brush, if you like, and brambles make it pretty impossible for the camera to work out what you want to take a picture of. So single focusing point is just the solution, I would say. A couple of people saying 70 to 300s or like an f4 or a variable aperture. Dave mentioned that, and I think also my comments have just jumped.
5 to 5.6, I think they may release for 5 to 6.3. It seems like they skip in 5.6 nowadays and going straight to 6.3, and that's, I guess, makes the lens a little bit smaller and lighter.
Yeah, that's exactly. In fact, one of our regular viewers, Jeff, who I don't think watches live but always catches up later, had said, how are Nikon making these Z lenses so much lighter? Like the 100 to 400 versus my 200 to 400, for example. Completely different lens, but it has a lot to do with the glass manufacturing, which has changed dramatically.
That's true. But even compared to the F-mount 80-400, that one looks big, 100-400, but actually it feels lighter. So even having this set up with Z9 feels lighter than, let's say, D6 and 80-400 lens.
Yeah. Peter Betts, this is a really great point, said, I need the 100 to 400 badly for wildlife, but have decided to keep my 70 to 200 2.8 and the 1.4 converter and just add the 2x converter. Then I don't have to get rid of the sharpest 70 to 200 on the planet, plus Z9. Yeah, the 70 to 200 is phenomenally sharp for a 70 to 200 lens. Obviously, we've had a few of them over the years. I think for most people, if you're shooting on a lower resolution sensor like a Z6, you won't necessarily see a difference straight off the bat. But if you're comparing it with a Z7 or a Z9 sensor, yes, you can definitely see the difference. And having the 2x converter is a good solution. I don't think you need both lenses personally.
Oh no, you kind of need to decide which end of focal range you shoot in. If you're shooting mostly between 70 and 200, then that's the lens you need.
Yeah.
So you can add teleconverter for occasional longer range. But if you mostly shooting between, let's say, 300 and 400 range, then it just doesn't make sense to have 70 to 100 and then teleconverter. So that's the thing. So if you haven't got one already, then you can kind of put a list of pros and cons. But if you already got 70 to 100, then yes, of course, agent teleconverter is fairly inexpensive solution to the problem.
Yeah. Andy was saying, why don't we go to the wetland center more for testing long lenses? I mean, a lot of the ducks that we saw, I could see locally, but at certain times of the year they have sort of there's some wetland centers, not the one that we went to, that have flamingos. You're asking about flamingos. James was telling me.
Shall we go to Africa?
No, there's one in action. I think there's one in Gloucestershire or Guildford. Somewhere.
That's cool.
But the one thing that we didn't see that I really hope to catch was a kingfisher. We didn't see any kingfishers, which was a shame. Would be a nice challenge.
No ostriches either.
No ostriches, no, it's true. We've got ostriches near me.
Well, we saw otters. They're not birds, but...
No, we did see otters, exactly. Roy said cockatoos are eating our house. Yeah, cockatoos, I mean, if you're in Australia, no problem with wild birds, taking completely different exotic wild birds in comparison.
We have some parrots in London as well.
We have parakeets, yes. Yeah. And people feed them out their hands now. That's how tame they are. But yeah, what we did notice though in wetland sensor that we did notice that you really need to have 600 plus lens in there
because a lot of action, especially if you're sitting in those huts, that kind of you can open the window, set up your lens.
The hides, yeah.
Exactly. They're nice, but you need to have a long lens. And we found that we had this lens on Z9 with a teleconverter attached, and we still had to go to DX crop just to get the magnification we need. And in some cases, we were still quite far away.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a huge kind of marshland area. So if that's your jam, if that's the kind of thing you want to do, then the longer the better ultimately. I mean, the 400 with its built-in converter, the new 13.5 grand lens, at least in the UK, will also take a teleconverter from what I could see in the literature. So that's quite exciting. That means it has the possibility to go further. I know that Rishi has got one. He's got his hands on, probably the only one in the UK. So he'll probably be releasing some videos pretty soon.
I'd rather have him having this lens than, any other YouTuber. I would say, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's definitely the best man for the job, let's say. Thank you to Terry for your contribution to the Coffee Fund, for something wet and warm to drink. Yes, thank you so much. Peter said it's 34 degrees and humid in Portsmouth. Everyone else is complaining of the cold. So Roy said teleconverters often mess with autofocus. They don't on the Zs, actually.
That's what surprised me. 1.4 with 100 to 400 on Z9, you're not noticing much difference.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
Yeah, and we've kind of gone... Obviously, in the olden times, I will say, which is not that long ago, we didn't have bodies that could focus with... They couldn't use the full autofocus with teleconverters, and that's something that we don't experience now so much with Z bodies and also with more recent DSLRs. So there was a term that we used to throw around quite a lot called F8 focusing bodies, which essentially meant that if the lens that it was using had sort of maximum aperture of f8, so you put on let's say a 2x converter and then your aperture is stuck at f8, the older bodies wouldn't be able to focus or would only be able to focus with a single point, and then newer bodies would be able to focus with at least a smaller area. Yeah,
you got single focusing points in the middle, and it's a clear example of 200 to 500, 5.6. So if you're a teleconverter, it effectively becomes f11, which a lot of DSLRs will struggle with.
Yeah, exactly. So then we've got a couple of people saying, so for example, Pierre-Louis said, what do you think about the 85 1.2? Many people want this lens. So let's just have a very quick look. If I can do it, here we go.
The roadmap.
This is the roadmap as it stands. I've blown it up a little bit, but we can see that there is a mystery 85 on it. It says S-Line and it's yellow, which means that it's still to be announced officially, but it is on the roadmap. So we've got this great sort of selection of wider sort of prime, so 20 all the way through to the 85. What do you think about an 85 1.2?
It's a difficult one, and I'll tell you why. Because yes, I would love 1.2. It comes down to the price. I'm afraid that the price that will be announced that I won't be able to afford it. So I'm just looking at the current price of 51.2 is 2299. It's a lot of money compared to 85 1.4G, which was retailing at about £1,400.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people like me, it would be quite a lot of money to spend on. And I have my 1.4G, and I'm keeping it for the time being. So that's why ideally I would want probably 1.4 myself, just based on the price. But in terms of just line up and how the lens is going to look, in a lineup, 1.2 definitely will make a statement.
1.2 would be lovely. Yeah, for sure. And then if we go back to the roadmap here and we have a look at, for example, so our sort of compact prime lenses, they've taken away the word pancake, thank goodness, because they're not really pancake.
No.
We have our 228s, our 40 and our 26. I mean, I would love to see a whole line, personally, of compact primes. Yeah. I think that we could really benefit from, for example, having they've gone 28 and 40 as opposed to 24 and 35, which is quite interesting. Yeah. But it would be nice to have something maybe in the slightly wider end. The DX one is a 24, so having a compact sort of, if they're going to go weird focal lengths, do a 22.
Well, 24 is basically what 35 mil, so it's 36 effectively, but we would call it 35. So I understand it would be similar to, I guess, a cheap DX Prime to go with it.
But I'd like an 18 that you
18,
can then...
Yeah, for me, 18 f2, that's what Fuji had on their X Pro series.
That's right.
So, yeah,
but it wasn't full frame. That was a compact. That was an APS-C lens.
Yeah, because the XF system is APS-C.
Exactly. So what if they did a full frame 18 that you could then also use? That
would be expensive.
You think so?
Yeah, 18 mil. It tells me that the price would be around £700-800 at least.
Okay, fair enough. So the whole point in these lenses is they're supposed to be sort of £200 to £300 at the most.
What I don't understand is 24DX, and then we have 26mm lens.
No.
So I personally think it's a placeholder. I personally think there's going to be something else there, but I could be wrong on that.
Interesting. Okay, so talking about wish list lenses, I'm sure that some of you are going to mention this, but we've got the macro section, we've got the 50 and the 105. Quite a few people have said to me in recent sort of months, I want a 200mm macro. I think that is a lens that should be replaced at some point. The 200mm f mount is kind of an iconic lens because it's the only macro lens that you could sort of
I have a
use
prediction. 200 f4 micro will come out around the same time as 135 f2 Z lens will come out. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah. Are you saying never, or are you saying
at the moment, not till 2024, I guess.
Okay.
Because roadmap doesn't show anything, but fingers crossed, definitely.
No, exactly.
I think it's one of those lenses that even now we sell quite, they're rare, the 200 f4 micros, and they still sell quite well.
Yeah, they do, for sure. I have to say thank you to Richard for your contribution to the Coffee Fund. Thank you so much. Did I miss anyone else? Because I'm very good at managing to miss my comments. I got Terry.
So yeah, I think we're good.
And I got Keith. Okay, good.
Perfect.
Excellent. We really appreciate it. And I want to make sure everyone gets acknowledged. So apologies if I'm skipping around here. Just want to make sure.
And we do answer all the questions.
Yes, exactly. That's the other thing. So Pierre-Louis, hopefully that answered you on our thoughts on the 85 1.2. Beta Carotene said, I bought a 2470 f4. Boring, I know, but feels surprisingly well made compared to the Pro 16 to 80 2.8 to 4DX. I find pretty much all of the Z lenses feel well made. Obviously, you've got the little compact lenses and they're plastic, but they all feel well made. They don't have that kind of cheap feel, if that makes sense. There isn't one that feels cheaper than the other. So I like the 2470 f4 as a lens. There was someone who said they didn't understand in our podcast why we'd said the 2470 f4 was better for video over the 24-120, and the only reason for that was that the 2470 f4 is what they call parfocal, which means that you don't have to refocus when you zoom in or zoom out for video work. It's just very helpful.
Remember those 70s movies when they zoom in, like, and the focus stays the same.
Yeah, you've got to, you have people who literally on movie sets are called focus pullers. Their job is to make sure that you're in focus or that the person is in focus, and no matter what angle
Therefore, it doesn't matter if you use 2470 or 24-120
no.
because you shoot at manual focus.
That's right. You've got a focus puller just for that job. Nick said, found the 300 PF with the 1.4 TC was good for the wetlands center. 500 would have been even better.
Yeah, 300 PF is on discount at the moment, isn't it?
No, not anymore.
It's finished? Too late.
Yeah, you're a few days too late with that one. Yeah. Ended on Monday. But the 500 with the teleconverter, that would have been great. I should have brought the 500 PF.
Or 800 with a teleconverter.
I don't have an 800. I can't help you there. Maybe when they finally... Obviously, Nikon have announced that there is going to be an 800. We have that development announcement. So maybe we can do another revisit.
Yeah, well, my guess that they will do the official release announcement before end of the year, so before end of March. It just makes sense because if you look at 400mm, it's been announced on 28th of October. And then we had announcement this Wednesday, right? So
19th of Jan.
19th of Jan. So was it about under 2 months? Yeah. So, and the 800mm has been announced when December. Yeah. So I guess, we're looking at around maybe February, March, proper release dates, and then probably end of March, official, kind of release.
Yeah. Exciting. I want the 200 to 600 development announcement because obviously we know that's coming. Quite a few of you have mentioned it. When do you think they're actually going to bring that out?
I think it's going to be soon. Personally, I think within this year.
Yeah. I would definitely hope we'll see the 200 to 600 before the end of the year. Probably not the end of the financial year, but maybe around summertime. It's sensible to bring that out for summer, I think.
Absolutely.
And that's going to compare with the F-mount 200 to 500, isn't it? That's ultimately
that looks like it. Yeah, absolutely. And then again, I think it will take teleconverters as well, which can be quite useful.
Very useful. Jan said, guys, off topic, let's talk about the cool scan sometime. We should do that. You've got one, haven't you? Yeah. Okay.
Ask me anything.
Okay, good. We will book in a time. When I'm away, Con will do an entire stream about cool scans.
Well, we can do some film photography scanning, guys, if you want.
Actually, a really good idea.
I thought it was very niche, but
I'm sure that there'll be people that would be interested because, okay, there's different sort of approaches to digitizing.
Yes, I went through several things through DSLR digitizing to scanner digitizing.
Yeah.
And now I'm using Coolscan 9000 for everything, and it definitely brings superior results compared to DSLR scanning. I know it may be controversial in some cases.
No, I think that's a completely accurate statement.
I had to test everything. I spent about maybe 4 months of my life going through all different methods and just trying to kind of, bring them, to the condition where I'm happy with them. But then I got Coolscan 9000 and didn't look back.
That's right. So yes, that was your live stream in a nutshell, but we can definitely do something about that. Now, there was also, before I show you the comparisons, we did some brick wall tests this morning.
Oh, yes.
Very clinical. Yeah. No, they weren't clinical at all. But we did just sort of stick the both lenses, the 100 to 400 and the F-mount 80 to 400 on a Z7 II, obviously because it's a 45 megapixel sensor. So we figured, okay, that's kind of as good as it's going to get. And then we put the 24-120Z versus the 24-120 F mount, again, both F4, and just very, very rough comparisons of a plain whitewashed concrete wall that we have in the back. And so it's very difficult for you to see because it's subject to internet connections and so many other things.
YouTube compression.
Yeah, exactly. So you won't necessarily be able to see the perfect results, but maybe we can just put them up on...
Trust us.
Yeah, we can put them up on our stories later or something so that you can see them. But I will show them to you. John, I know where Rishi finds his Kingfishers, where he used to live, actually. He had a stream a couple of minutes away from his house, and that's where he used to shoot the Kingfishers. I actually had Kingfishers in the forest near where I live. And
you live in the forest?
I live in a forest. No, I don't live in a forest, but near. And I have many times gone and tried, but there's always people walking their dogs and stuff. So
I know those people. I know.
Dog owners, no. So they usually don't. Particularly in the summer months, they tend to feed when people aren't around. Whereas in winter months, as I understand it, you're more likely to see them because they don't have much daylight. So they try and come out. Anyway, so there you go. Tip for Kingfisher spotting.
Thank you, Becky Attenborough.
Yes, you're welcome. Do they have flamingos in St. James's Park?
I haven't seen.
No, Regent's Park.
They have pelicans.
They have pelicans in St. James's.
Flamingos in St.
No, they had flamingos in Kensington Roof Gardens, which isn't there anymore.
On the roof?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was owned by Richard Branson.
Okay.
Anyway, they sold it.
Virgin Atlantic.
It was very sad. So
I'm sure they probably... Someone mentioned that they have flamingos in London Zoo. I've never been to London Zoo.
Oh, well, all the animals feel really sad in London Zoo.
That's why I never kind of felt the need to go there.
But yeah, pelicans in St. James's Park, as David pointed out. So there we go. Vince said, I've been fairly lucky with reliable sightings of kingfishers in Richmond Park early mornings. This is so unhelpful for people that aren't in London. I'm sorry, it's quite region specific. But it's good for us because then we can do all our tests and we can then show you the results. Well, hey.
It's only 10 minutes from London.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, so let's just very briefly address the elephant in the room, which is the Z7 II firmware, because I'm getting quite a few questions about that.
Well, I don't think it's the firmware that we're all waiting for.
It's not the firmware.
No.
It's not the one that we were all hoping for that turned the Z6 into a almost as good as Z6 II kind of AF camera.
Yeah, but it did improve the low light focusing on Z7 II. I don't know if it's worth for us testing it, but I'm hoping to wait for the proper autofocus improvement firmware, and then we can test those things.
Yeah, exactly. We can do shorter videos, maybe not put them on YouTube, but put them somewhere else. But our time is a little bit constrained sometimes to go out and do these things. We also discovered that the Z6 II doesn't give you the autofocus display on the Atmos,
which is still work in progress. I think I wonder if we can still fix it somehow.
It's a bizarre thing. We never had a problem with the Z6. So there's a few sort of behind the scenes curious difficulties that we've had in doing some more videos like that for you. But we would like to do some more firmware tests just so that you can see the difference, and also so that we can see the difference, because it's useful to know.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so Pierre-Louis said Nikon should also release a 135 f1.8. We were talking a little bit about the f2.
At the same time as 200 f4. Yeah, absolutely. No, I need 135.
135
testing the Sigma 135,
yes,
which also video is in production at the moment. So we compared 135 Nikon and Sigma 135.
Yeah.
And the Sigma 135 is lovely. So having, like, let's say if Nikon releases a native Z 135, something like 1.8 or f2, I would love to get one of those myself.
Absolutely. Jerry said, are you hearing any new rumblings about the patented 100mm f1.4? No rumblings.
Unfortunately, patents can take years, and in most cases, they become something else. So I think maybe this 100 1.4 will become eventually 105 1.4.
Yeah, it's true. 105 1.4. That's right. It could be that. And then Phil said, when do you think we'll see the 600mm f4? And do you think it'll have a built-in teleconverter? I hope so. I feel like that is now what I'm hoping is going to be a norm for Nikon, because obviously the last one was the 180 to 400 f mount, and now the 400. So if those pro end lenses have a built-in teleconverter, I think it will solve a lot of problems for some people. There's a small percentage of people in the world who can afford to have one of each focal length. Let's put it that way. I know a few photographers who have, for example, a 400 and a 600, but they don't want to buy the 500.
Yeah, well, you see, 600mm is on the Nikon roadmap. It's grayed out. We can see the silhouette of it, and it's definitely, so it's definitely, I think we'll have teleconverter. It seems like it's the way they go in, having built-in teleconverter in this type of lenses.
Yeah.
So we rumored to have this, and 800mm 6.3 as well. But there's also, if you can see in the roadmap, there's S-line 400mm smaller one. So it looks like something like f4.5 or 5.6 fluorite.
That's right.
So
which would be really cool.
Yeah, so that could be a case as well. But I think 600 is definitely coming. The question is when we're going to see 300, 500 mil lenses, because those weren't mentioned at all.
No, and they've been very successful in the F mount, so makes way more sense to have them. But having a small 400 is good. If they start with that one, I'm not complaining.
Absolutely, and then and then they can release 500, let's say PF later.
Yeah, Wild Totarda said constant aperture on the 200 600 and it's sold. So yeah, I'd assume that it will be a fixed f5.6.
5.6, yeah, it's not going to be wider than that, I'm afraid.
No, exactly. And yeah, it would be good if it was at a price point that was similar to the 200 to 500, maybe a little bit more expensive because it's a Z lens and newer. So
200 to 500 came out at what, about 1,300 pounds?
It wasn't as much as that even. I think it was 1299.
1299. Okay, so it was at some point as low as 999 on offer. So if 200 to 600 comes out, and obviously we look that Z glass becomes more expensive by at least something like 20%.
Yeah.
Compared to F mount equivalent. So it seems like we will be looking at something between, let's say, 1699 or 1999 for that lens. So
that
basically
makes sense.
17 or 2,000 pounds. Yeah.
That makes sense. Dave says the 105 MC is my favorite of my Z lenses, Becky. At the moment, almost 3-dimensional, great for woodland stuff, I find. I would love, we only had the 105 macro for an afternoon. We had to give it back at the end of the day. I was very sad. I wanted to take it home with me. We did the butterflies.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and we just had it for that day. We had to kind of have an immediate verdict on it, which was quite difficult. And I mean, the problem is that they're so difficult to get hold of. They don't come in large quantities at all. We get about one a month at the moment, but it's definitely one that I'd like to try more extensively.
I just wonder what maybe it's a specific element that they're missing all the time that takes ages to produce. Remember back in the day when the F-mount 14 to 24 came out? and they were out of stock for quite some time. We were getting very small shipments, and apparently they said that this curved front element would take ages to produce because it had to cool for several months or something like this. So I wonder if the 105 has something there that just certain part that's difficult to produce. I'm not talking just semiconductors or anything.
No, but actually like part of the glass process.
Yeah.
Could be, because it's weird that it's taking this long. It came out in June, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like we have more Z9 shipments than 105 shipments, because if you look on the internet, Z9 shipments are coming through, at least in the United States. Like
not in the UK. I'd like to point out we have not. No. This year we haven't had any Z9s.
That's true. But then you look at like B&H is already starting to ship their Z9s to non-NPS people, etc., etc. So,
but that is because the US. I didn't want to talk about the Z9, but that's because the US of that batch, from what I understood, got about 3,000 units.
They got all the money. So it seems like,
Whereas the rest of the world had to then fight over the remaining 500 units.
We got the scraps.
We got the lion's share of what was in the UK, which wasn't very much.
It's nice that at least in some territories, people are getting their Z9. So I hope 105 will pick up soon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. His fingers, toes, everything crossed. There was a thank you very much to Mandar for your contribution to the Coffee Fund. Thank you so much. And Michael said, even though you're waffling on about Z lenses again, I still wanted to buy you a couple of coffees. Michael's not an adopter of the Z system, but thank you so much. All the same, really appreciate it.
Let's talk about death of DSLR instead.
No, let's not poke the bear. So let me just show you, because you might find this interesting. It's going to be quite a difficult test to show, but this is a wall.
This is a picture of a wall.
This is a picture of a wall. Let me just zoom out a little bit here.
Wow, you're so creative, Becky.
I know. I thought so. So this is the 100 to 400 shot at 100 millimeters, right? So this is a reasonably close focus. Obviously, there's a little bush down the corner. Ignore the bush. But if we look at it without Google's vignetting added, because if you zoom in too much, then it adds some vignetting. But it's a sharp, you can zoom right in and see all the little bits of paint on the wall, the crackle effect, if you like.
It's not bad.
No. Okay, this is the 80 to 400 at 100 mil. And believe it or not, you may not be able to tell super clearly. Let me just move it to about the same position. It's got a mind of its own, this thing. So 100 to 400, 80 to 400.
Well, this one is softer. I can clearly see that.
I don't know if you can see that at home, but it is very obvious to us looking at the pictures on our screen that the 80 to 400 is softer. Obviously, I'm having to zoom in quite a lot to see that. If you were looking at the pictures at a sort of, normal viewing size, let's zoom out. Hopefully none of you have motion sickness. From me doing that. But if you compare those, you probably can't see a huge difference on the screen. But when you zoom in, you can see the difference. Now, if I switch over to...
famous pixel peepers.
We are excellent at doing this.
Yes.
So now this is at 400 on the 100 to 400.
It's wide open.
And that's wide open on both. And let's just zoom in and we can see the tiny little particles.
Which one is it? 100 to 400.
This is the 100 to 400. Okay, now let's look at the 80 to 400. And you can definitely see, if you look at the portions where there's lots of sort of, let's say, distressed paint, where there's little hairs and filaments and stuff from the paintbrush, I guess.
It's softer.
Yeah. You see that?
You can see the texture of the paint on the Z lens, and then it all looks blurry.
And it kind of gets lost on the 80 to 400.
Definitely.
So that was our kind of very quick, this morning took us about 15 minutes. We just set everything up, set it all to the same parameters, put the exposure delay mode on to make sure there was no camera shake. It was on a stable desktop tripod.
Yeah, very scientific.
Very scientific. But it was more just to kind of give you an immediate impression.
With the lab coats on, the special goggles, everything. Yeah.
Protective gear, yeah, absolutely. The thing is that when you're shooting out in the field, sometimes you don't necessarily see those differences because you're not pixel peeping all the time. You're not sort of zooming into 200% and looking every pixel. But people find it interesting. I find most photographers want to know how close how much they can zoom or crop or whatever with their cameras. They want to see the atoms of the paint.
Well, that's true. I mean, if you spend a lot of money on the lens, you want to feel good about it, that it performs really well, So I think it makes sense. I mean, obviously, if you got a lens already, and you feel like you don't need to, you don't want to replace it straight away with the same lens, but let's say for Z mount, then why won't you use that, let's say FT1 adapter for the time being, and then maybe eventually upgrade,
Yes. And Rory said someone should buy us a test target. I've actually got one. I need to open it.
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know if you want to go so scientific on our reviews or anything like this, because
we ain't scientists.
Yeah, but at least there are 10 different sources online with all the charts and specifications, so you can't get this information everywhere else. So that's why, I don't really want to go that way.
Okay.
But I do have a chart as well.
Yeah, I realized that I was sent one and I thought, that would have been a really good idea. We could have hung it on the wall. But yeah, that's not necessarily what we're going for. It's more like, and I also find that those lab tests okay, so we've got, for example, look at Charles, who sent us that beautiful picture of he's using a 1952 lens on his Leica, right? The Nikon screw mount Leica lens.
Yeah.
But the older lenses give you a certain rendering that you don't get with modern glass. And also I think that when we do our kind of out in the field shots, it has a lot to do with how we want the picture to look. We actually have some creativity. Bit of our creative genius into it, but it's not.
I am very creative person.
Yes, but it's not always about zooming in and looking at the pixels. And I find it frustrating sometimes when people say, "Why didn't you do those two side by side?" Well, because we're not doing lab tests. That's not the purpose.
You have this information online. I think, we try to go for kind of real world experience and see how we feel about the lens more than anything else. But like basic tests,
very emotional. Emotional tests.
It was very warm in my hand.
That's right. So I hope you don't mind that, and apologies to anyone that really likes the nerdy stuff.
But I have this idea about the lub.
Yes.
You might use. You never know. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, as Roy said, Rishi does it best. He does some great bench tests. Sometimes you don't want to. We're not going to do it better than him, quite frankly. So why would we try and do the same thing as him when he does it far better than anyone else I know on the internet, quite frankly. So we're these were quick tests, what you would do at home if you were quickly testing a lens just to see which one was sharper. Same kind of thing. So we're trying to emulate a real world environment. Shall we have a little look at the 24-120?
Oh, yeah, sure. We've done the brick wall test.
We did the brick wall test. Now, something happened to the white balance in the middle of this, and I don't quite understand what happened. But anyway, so one shot is quite blue.
Okay.
Apologies for that. So this is, again, our lovely brick wall. This is at 24 on the Z 24-120. So if we just zoom in a little bit, wait for it to resolve. Yeah, that's pretty sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can see some of the bubbles and paint and stuff like that. This is the 24-120 F mount lens.
I mean, vignetting quite noticeable straight away.
Yeah, it's true. It does vignette quite a lot. And I think that's partly because the camera is fixing it. I just need to see how zoomed in I went. I went quite zoomed in, didn't I? The tripod was in the same place.
But you can see this one is sharper straight away, the Z.
Yeah, it's taking a minute to load the shot. But anyway, so that is about the same distance. That's about the same distance. There we go. That's the same position. So the 24-120 Z is marginally sharper than the F4.
No, for me, it's a lot sharper.
You consider that to be a lot sharper?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And then this is at the 120 end. This was where the white balance went funky, and I didn't notice until I uploaded this to the computer. So this is actually the Z lens. I don't know why the white balance went a bit doolally, but there we go. And then there's normal colored white balance.
Both of them are quite soft, actually, at 120. I'm just looking at it now.
But you can see, again, if you have a look at this little point of paint here, right, for example, it's there on this one.
Yeah, it's definitely sharper.
It's marginally sharper. Again, I would say it's a small difference at the 120 end. It's much more noticeable throughout the rest of the range. We basically just shot at the extremities of each lens to make life easy. We could do tests at 24, 50, 85, 105, etc. Yeah, we don't have a brick wall, Andy. Sorry, we need to find a brick wall. We're going to have to go down the road somewhere and get the tripod out and stuff. But as it was like sort of an impromptu test before we started doing this, it was a little bit difficult. But yeah, it's just to give you a really vague idea of the sharpness differences between the Zs and the Fs. The 100 to 400 is markedly sharper than the 80 to 400, I've noticed. The 24-120, for the most part, is slightly sharper, but it's not, blow your head off sharper. The 18 to 140, do you remember we did that test?
Yes.
We didn't do it live or anything like that. We just did a couple of little sort of in-house tests. The Z lens was, again, that bit sharper than the F-mount version. So if you were using a DX camera and you then put the 18 to 140 F-mount on it, you would have seen that it'd be a little bit softer. Michael said we could have a day with Rishi. Yeah, we have done it a few times, actually. We should, I think he's in Iceland at the moment.
Yes.
So
yes. Not shooting Kingfishers.
No. So we'll have to do it when he's back over here. He's doing something that I've always wanted to do. Always wanted to go to Iceland.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit cold there as well.
Bit nippy. This is probably the worst time.
That's what I'm thinking.
Go.
Yeah, to go in winter to Iceland.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we have actually neglected to talk about the DX lenses on the roadmap. So should we have a little look further down the roadmap? I know you don't necessarily care about that, but anyway, we're going to do it anyway.
I didn't say anything, by the way.
It's an in-joke. So this is actually the zooms. Do we want any more zooms apart from the 200 to 600 and the 70 to 300?
Yes, I want to have another 24 to something. Just please give it to me.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to have at least 10, 24.
Are there enough lenses in this section, do you think?
Not enough.
Not enough 24s. I think, the 28 to 75, someone was saying that they thought that the 200 to 600, because it's not an S-line, was going to be variable aperture. Not necessarily, because if you look at the 28 to 75 Tamron / Nikon, that is a fixed f2.8. It's not an S-line lens, and it's about the sort of halfway between the 2470 f4 price and the 24 to 70 f2.8 S.
That's right. And then 200 to 500 F-mount 5.6 by Nikon is also not the golden ring type. So it's not considered to be a pro lens.
It doesn't have the nano crystal coat. It's fairly, but it's a very good lens.
And it's a fixed aperture.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we are expecting that to be a fixed aperture. So any other sort of notable mentions?
Well, the Will Roger says, well, give me a 12-28 lens, and I agree. It is on roadmap, and I can't wait for it enough because we are missing wide angle on DX side.
Yeah, so here we go. Just scroll down a little bit, and then we've got this end. So 12-28 definitely need a wide angle DX lens for
Probably
sure.
will be a 4 or 3.5 to 4.5, one of those.
Yeah, and do you think that they're going to do another DX lens? So we've got the 12-28 to come, and we've got that 24, which will become a 36 DX prime. Do you think we'll see any more DX lenses?
Well, the question is, are they going to release any pro DX zooms, which I don't think they will, but if they release something like Z90, which will be mini Z9 with DX sensor, aka T500, then we may see a pro either mid-range or wide angle, because this doesn't make sense to release another 7200 DX.
Like a 17 or 16 to 80.
16 to 80, 2804, 17 to 55, 2.8, and maybe something like 10 to 20, 3.5 or 2.8. But again, I think it's a long shot, a very long shot. I would
love to see some more sort of excitement for the DX range. I wonder if there's anyone. Yeah, Jerome said, why no S-line DX lenses? Well, isn't that the question? I don't know why they're not doing S-line ones, but I think at the moment it's mainly to do with the fact that they don't have a camera for an S-line lens. The cameras that they have, the Z50 and the ZFC, great little sensors, fantastic sort of portable travel bodies, I would say, and good for content creators and videographers. And to be honest, that camera is my choice for sort of travel and street photography. But for pro sort of wildlife work, I've used the Z50 for bird photography. Actually, I
of course you did.
Of course I did. I put the 70 to 200 on it. I put the 500 PF on it, and I love it for that. But it could benefit from a sort of hybrid, almost like a Z9 AF system in a small body. Obviously not a Z9 AF system, but something better than what it currently has, because the focus definitely struggles a bit.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Nikon mentioned several times that the full frame, that's where they at, but it makes sense to release more DX goodies, cameras and lenses to bring more people into the system because they generally would be less expensive than full frame equivalent.
Yeah, the affordability is a really big point on it as well. And as Connor says, 70-200 f4 with lots of exclamation marks. Yes, we want a 70-200 f4.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, do you think Nikon would do well if they did a 70-300 variable aperture and then a 70-200 f4?
They need both, let's be honest. I mean, they do exist in F-mount versions, so yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I agree with that.
I think the variable apertures we need first, so because that's going to be an entry level, full frame telephoto lens, and then the second one would be 70-200 f4.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Will Rogers says an 18-55 f2.8 to 4 like Fuji has would make a great pair with the Z90. That's true. So
they have 16-80 on F-mounts. So
2.8 to 4, yeah.
Exactly. So they could, which is basically 24-120.
They need to kind of slim it down a bit if they're going to put it on a Z camera.
That's true.
It's a weirdly fat lens for a DX body.
That's true. And 18-55 Fuji one, I had one of those back in the day. It's a really nice small lens and the image quality was really good.
There you go. Yeah, and Ed said Z90 please, and Michael was saying waiting for a Z replacement for my D500. Garrett, the Z90 is a fictional camera. It would essentially be a DX version of the Z9 theoretically, or a step up from the Z50.
Yeah. 2.5?
Yeah, I think that's going to be too expensive, but yeah.
It's the camera that will be expensive.
Yeah.
Because there's not going to sell in
huge quantities.
Numbers. Yeah, absolutely.
I think if they pegged it around 2,000, that would be better.
I think
you think it would be
too cheap with the Z9 technology? I mean, I wish it would be the case. I just, my brain tells me that just looking at the cost of it is probably going to be quite expensive.
Fair enough.
Yeah. When I say I don't agree, it doesn't mean that. Of course, I want everything to be cheaper.
Everyone wants it to be cheaper.
Everyone likes a bargain, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely realized with the 400 when the 400 came out, I did not expect on Wednesday morning to have quite as many phone calls about it as I did. It is obviously going to be an absolutely stunning lens, but I was truly amazed at how many people went, yes, I absolutely, hands down, want one of those without a doubt. And I thought, gosh, okay, am I in the wrong line of work? I didn't think that, but I was just like, I thought that's amazing because obviously it's a lens that would be wonderful to have. Okay. But yeah.
Let's have a look at the current prices in UK. So the 400 FL F-mount costs 12,000. So 11.99, yeah? Mm-hmm. That's, I think, not recommended retail. I think it was more than that.
It was about 13 or 14, I think, yeah.
Well, this one is 13.5.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, and you also have a built-in teleconverter,
yes,
then it's about the same price. It could be just a little bit more,
So
true. The thing is that, okay, we had Z9, which came out actually cheaper than D6. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's possible because, in terms of construction, maybe it's cheaper to manufacture the mirrorless lenses because less, there's no mirror, maybe because of that. I'm not 100% sure. So, but they can reduce cost on the cameras. I don't think they can reduce cost on the lenses.
No.
So yeah, I think they will be just a little bit, something between 10 to 20% in price increase compared to F-mount equivalents.
I think that's a fair statement. Michael said, are Nikon waiting for third party to fill the missing lenses? This is a good question. We've spoken to Sigma and they are waiting for approval because they don't reverse engineer anything. They actually get a license approved by Nikon and Canon and so on in order to make lenses for them. So they've already managed to do that with the likes of Fuji and Leica. And we really, really, really hope that Nikon do give them a license to make some Z lenses because then we've got 20 more lenses for the lineup, which we absolutely want.
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
Sure. Exactly. And as Keith and Len said, please do give us a like. Thank you to everyone who has so far. It does massively help the channel. I don't know why, but I think YouTube thinks if people don't like it, but they watch it, that they don't like it. Do you know what I mean? So you have to physically do something to show your love.
These buttons, this bell thing makes a lot of difference. And it's just the way the algorithms work. And it just pushes us. Yeah, it basically pushes it. What it does is basically when people browse, it puts in a list of, what YouTube offers. And obviously YouTube kind of constructs your feed for you. It's like Facebook and other things, So in terms of this, more people see our live stream because you click those buttons. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's all it is. But we do appreciate it when you hit the like button. It's very helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you to Pete for your contribution to the
Thank you,
Coffee
Pete.
Fund. Said, looking at my 24-120 here, feeling very lonely without its body. Hurry up, Holland. Sorry, always late to this party. Well, that's okay, Pete. You can always catch up later. So for those of you who are in the UK or Europe, you'll know that Nikon send their stuff to Holland, where it gets distributed from there. Someone did ask earlier about stocks of the 100 to 400 and the 24-120. As far as I know, 24-120 orders are now on a sort of first come, first serve basis. We've handled all the back orders except maybe one, which is a very recent one. But all of the people who pre-ordered the 24-120 now have their 24-120. So yay.
So even if there is no stock, the wait is not very long.
No, the wait
a
is
couple of weeks or so.
Exactly. As another sort of, I know we're running out of time, but as another sort of delivery update, there was an issue in Holland where their warehouse staff have to be split into teams because of COVID.
Bubbles.
Yeah, they have to have their own workforce bubbles, and then both bubbles had a COVID outbreak.
The bubbles have burst.
The bubbles burst, and it was all just horrible. So essentially, we have not had much in the way of deliveries this year at all in the UK. I think if you speak to any other dealers, they'll probably say a similar thing. I've found that out through sort of pulling lots and lots of strings to find out why is there nothing coming out of Holland. But that's apparently why. So if you've got a 100 to 400 on pre-order, that's still a little bit of a wait. We're getting sort of drip fed those. Z9s are not due in anytime soon from what we know, but Nikon might surprise us. They might surprise us. And when people say, where is my Z9? When is it arriving? I say, well, how long is a piece of string? I don't know is the answer.
You start to think about some happy place.
I have to go to my happy place. Yeah, I know. It's really, really painful.
Yeah. Well, Gaio says the new 100 to 400 together with Z9 is producing amazing images for me.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that, because the people who have these products, the lucky ducks that they are, do say that these things are amazing. And I think that Nikon, obviously having released products that people want at a time when it's very difficult to both manufacture and ship products in general, has just kind of compounded the situation and makes all the sales staff feel like they need a very long holiday.
Yeah, it's only the time when compounding interest is not working in your favor, isn't it?
That's right. Anyway, we've pretty much exhausted the roadmap. We've spoken for a full hour about these things. Well done, us.
We like to speak about new things.
We do like to talk about the new stuff. We hope you found that really interesting. And if not, I'm sorry. But thank you to everyone for your contributions to the Coffee Fund.
Thank
a couple of you said, I've done PayPal. I'm going to go check the PayPal after. I'll make my list of names.
Did you thank people?
I didn't.
Okay, here we go. I reminded you.
You did remind me. I can find it if you wait for my spreadsheet to load. I have a spreadsheet. So I must thank for December and some of January, Jerry.
Thank you.
Gil, Alan.
Thank you.
Patrick Malloy.
Thank you.
Ian Willard.
Thank you, Ian.
Gary McCoftry. I think that's how you pronounce it. Andrew Miller. And Phil Dixon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for your contributions to the Coffee Fund. We will see you next week for another live stream.
Oh, yes. We might have a special one for you. You never know.
Sam said, Robert Pike, £50.
Whoa.
Robert, thank you so much. Goodness me, coffee and cake.
I'm gone after live stream.
That's right. Thank you very, very, very much. We will see you next week. We've got a video on Sunday.
Yeah. But the next live stream could be a special one.
It could be a special one.
We're still kind of preparing, so we don't want to say anything yet. But if kind of stars line up, then we're going to have a very special guest for you. Yeah. So we may have a special guest. It may be a different time of day because the special guest is not on UK time. But we'll keep you posted either way. Time. It's on Mars time. Have a wonderful weekend and week ahead, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye.